Tonight, we step into the story of another extraordinary survivor whose journey was unlike any other. This is episode 4 in our series, The Unluckiest People Alive. If you're new here, you can start from episode 1, or simply settle in and enjoy tonight's story. This is the story of a man who defied the odds in a way that seems almost impossible. He wasn't caught in just one accident. He wasn't even struck twice. He was struck by lightning 7 times and lived to tell the tale. This is the story of Roy Sullivan, the human lightning rod. Roy Cleveland Sullivan was born on February 7, 1912 in Greene County, Virginia. He grew up in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in a quiet rural community surrounded by forests and farmland. The mountains of Virginia were his home, and they would remain so for all of his life. As a young man, Roy found his calling in nature. He joined the National Park Service and became a ranger at Shenandoah National Park. Rangers were responsible for protecting the park's landscapes, guiding visitors, preventing forest fires, and dealing with emergencies in the wild. Roy fit naturally into this role. He was described as tall, serious, and deeply dedicated to his work. He loved the outdoors and took pride in his responsibilities. He married, built a life for himself, and seemed destined for a steady, though perhaps unremarkable, career as a park ranger. But Shenandoah National Park is a place of dramatic weather. Summer storms sweep through the ridges with little warning. Lightning crashes through the valleys. For most people, the risk of being struck is incredibly small. For Roy Sullivan, however, lightning would become the defining feature of his life. He was about to face a string of encounters so unlikely that he would earn a place in the Guinness World Records. The man struck by lightning more times than anyone else in history. The first strike came in the late 1940s during his early years as a ranger. It was the beginning of a bizarre and dangerous pattern that no one could have predicted. The first documented lightning strike happened while Roy was still relatively new as a ranger in Shenandoah National Park. He was on duty in a fire lookout tower. The tower had not yet been fitted with a lightning rod, leaving it highly vulnerable during storms. A storm rolled in and lightning struck the tower. The bolt hit Roy directly, burning a strip across his body and leaving him with lasting scars. He lost a nail on one of his big toes. This first strike was painful, frightening, and damaging, but he survived. Many who heard about it at the time thought it was just a freak accident, but for Roy, it was only the beginning.
It would be more than 2 decades before lightning struck him again. In 1969, Roy was driving his truck through the park when another storm developed. Lightning bolts struck 2 trees nearby, then jumped into his truck through the open window. Was knocked unconscious. His eyebrows and eyelashes were burned off, and his hair was singed. When he woke up, he was still inside the truck, but disoriented. Once again, he lived through it. This time, however, the oddity of his survival began to draw attention. Just 1 year later, in 1970, Roy was again caught in a storm while driving. This time, the bolt struck a tree and bounced into his truck. The lightning hit him directly, burning his shoulder. At this point, park staff and locals began to joke nervously that Roy seemed cursed, or at the very least unusually attractive to lightning. The 4th strike occurred in 1972. Roy was working in Shenandoah National Park, standing near a ranger station. Lightning struck him in the head, setting his hair on fire. He rushed to a nearby restroom and tried to put out the flames using a wet towel. His skin was burned, and he suffered injuries to his head and chest. This incident left him especially shaken. He began to carry water with him at all times, just in case lightning struck him again and set him ablaze. The following year, 1973, lightning found him yet again. He was out on patrol in the park when the bolt hit him, injuring his leg. By now, his story was gaining wider recognition. Newspapers reported on his record of lightning strikes, and people began to call him the human lightning rod. At 1976, Roy was struck for the 6th time while walking along a trail. The lightning bolt hit him in the ankle, causing yet more burns and injuries. It seemed almost unbelievable. but Roy himself kept meticulous records of his encounters, and hospital reports backed them up. The final strike came on June 25, 1977. Roy was fishing in a freshwater pool when a lightning bolt struck him, burning his chest and stomach. Despite the pain, he survived again. But this seventh strike also had another odd twist. After being hit, Roy encountered a bear trying to steal trout from his fishing line. Despite his injuries, he fought the bear off with a stick. This wasn't even the first time. According to Roy, it was the 22nd bear encounter he had dealt with in his life as a ranger. By the time of this last strike, Roy Sullivan's reputation was firmly cemented. No one in recorded history had ever been struck by lightning so many times and survived. He was officially recognized by the Guinness World Records as the man struck by lightning more than anyone else. Yet, for Roy himself, these were not tales of glory. They were experiences of pain, injury, and fear. By the mid-1970s, Roy Sullivan was no longer just a park ranger. He was a man whose name had traveled far beyond Virginia. Newspapers dubbed him the human lightning rod. Television programs invited him to share his story. He became a walking curiosity, a record holder living in the shadow of the most unpredictable force of nature. This acknowledgement brought him fame, but it was a kind of fame Roy never sought. He was, by all accounts, a private man who wanted to do his work in Shenandoah and live quietly. Though his survival was remarkable, the repeated strikes had a profound psychological effect. Roy admitted he lived with fear during thunderstorms. Whenever the sky darkened and clouds gathered, he felt uneasy, sometimes to the point of panic. He even began to suspect that people avoided him during storms, worried that standing too close might put them at risk. This sense of isolation weighed on him. His family life suffered as well. At one point, his wife was reportedly struck by lightning while hanging laundry outside, though Roy himself wasn't directly hit that time. The odd coincidence only deepened the sense that lightning somehow followed him and those around him. Surviving 7 lightning strikes left more than just emotional scars. Each strike had caused real injuries: burns on his body, singed hair and eyebrows, damaged toenails and shoulders, chronic pain in certain areas. Despite this, Roy continued his duties as a park ranger until his retirement in 1979. His toughness and dedication to his job remained admirable. Roy's record gave him a peculiar kind of celebrity status. He appeared in interviews, often with a mix of humor and weariness, recounting the strange sequence of events. While some people were fascinated, others expressed doubt. Lightning seemed so random, how could it strike the same man 7 times? But park records, hospital reports, and witnesses confirmed the truth. Shenandoah staff backed his claims, and his medical files detailed the aftermath of each incident. Behind the headlines, however, Roy's life was not easy. The combination of fame, fear, and personal issues created heavy burdens. In 1983, at the age of 71, Roy Sullivan died by suicide. Reports suggest his death was not related to lightning, but to personal struggles in his private life. It was a tragic end to the story of a man who had endured more brushes with death than most could imagine. Roy's legacy endures in a mix of wonder and disbelief. He remains the only person recorded to have survived 7 separate lightning strikes. His story is often retold in science features, survival discussions, and Guinness World Record books. Scientists point out that the odds of being struck once in a lifetime are already incredibly small. To be struck 7 times and live to tell the tale makes Roy Sullivan's story one of the strangest in modern history. Roy Sullivan's story is one of the strangest chapters in human history. On the surface, he was an ordinary man, a U.S. park ranger who loved the outdoors, tended his duties in Shenandoah, and tried to live a simple life. But nature had other plans. To be struck by lightning once is rare. To be struck 7 times and survive them all places Roy in a category of his own. His life became a symbol of both resilience and the unpredictable forces that shape human existence. Some called him cursed. Others believed he was miraculously protected. For Roy, the truth was more complex. He carried the scars, both physical and emotional, and bore the weight of being forever associated with lightning. His story has since been retold in countless articles, documentaries, and record books, often with the same mixture of awe and disbelief. In the end, Roy Sullivan is remembered not just as the human lightning rod, but as a reminder of how fragile, yet enduring human life can be. Such stories remind us that history is filled not only with kings and wars, but with ordinary people whose lives were touched by extraordinary forces. And next, we'll move to another story unlike any other. The story of Anne Hodges, the only person in recorded history to be struck by a meteorite from outer space. Thanks for tuning in.